Well, good evening, everyone. I really appreciate everybody coming out on a cold, windy night. I promise the presentation will be worth it.
Yes.
We have a lot to go over tonight. I just want to reintroduce myself each time. I'm Bob Buscemi. I'm the Director of Special Projects for the City of Milton. So I'm kind of heading up this Deerfield implementation plan. We have Councilmember Jan Jacobus with us tonight. We have Councilmember Phil Kramer with us. We have Judy Birds, the Director, the Chair of the Planning Commission. So the room's kind of filled up. I have some staff. I have Tracy Wiles. She takes care of the land development. She's the land development manager for the city, so she takes care of all the LDPs and developments that come in. So as these developments that we're looking at here on the map start to come in, she'll be the one that's reviewing all of that development proposals. We have Robert Del Ross. He's Public Works, but I'll remind everybody he's with the city and he's not with GDOT. If you need to throw any arrows or anything like that, yeah, he takes them well. And then we have Cooper Carry staff. We have Gray and Allison from Cooper Carry. Those are the consultants that we have engaged to help us, assist us with the level of effort that we're putting into this project. Okay, just to go over quick, the project schedule, we're currently in phase 2. So we've completed phase 1 on time, and now phase 2, which really concentrates mostly on the design guideline manual that we're going to start to show you some of that tonight, getting feedback from the community on the various events that we've had. So that's going to be done and completed by the end of December. So that's not that far away. So we're working like beavers to get that done. We're trying to maintain schedule. Then we'll be back in front of the City Council in January to let them know how we're doing and to present more information to the council at large and the mayor and show them what we're doing. And then we'll be into phase 3, which is mostly geared around code revision and code adjustments that may be needed in order to achieve all the things that we're seeing here. We've conducted 3 open houses, all very well, high levels of participation in those. So we were really happy. We did an online survey. I think we got over 260 responses, which was amazing. It was a very long survey, and they told me long surveys, you don't get a lot of responses. And but we got 260, so that was really good. And the nice part was that most of the responses we got on the survey, the online survey, really were pretty much in alignment with what we got with the in-person open houses where people came in, which is nice. I think the community is kind of thinking along the same lines, which is really nice to see. Everybody's picking the same photos, they're picking the same options and amenities. So I think the people in Milton really know what they want, and they're pretty consistent. I think a lot of people move to Milton for certain look and feel and character, and I think it's consistent across the board, which is really nice. So all the things you're going to see tonight on the presentation is a result of all that community input that we've been receiving. So this has been a community-driven project. I want to reassure everybody that we've been listening to the community, and the community has been driving it. So thank you for being here, because we really listen to your input, and it is what makes and molds the outcome of what Deerfield will be in the future. So it's not like you're just sitting here and listening to me. You're really going to get up, participate, show us what it is, and then we're really implementing what it is the community is telling us to do. So that's a nice feedback there. Okay, so little things that we're going to start to look at in phase 3 would be, I'll just give you some quick inklings of where things are driving. We're going to look at better defining open space. Right now, the code just says the word open space, 10%. 10% of the lot area is open space. But it really doesn't tell you what open space is, other than open space. And as a result of what we've been seeing here, open space is, it really takes on different shapes and forms, which Allison's going to go through. And I think people want different experiences with what they consider open space to be. So that would be something that we're probably going to recommend to council from a staff perspective. Incentives for on-site development amenities. So a lot of people have been saying, Bob, we like different amenities. We want walking trails and things. And again, Allison will go through what those look like in detail. But the key is, if the community really wants those amenities, they come with a cost. And what we'd like to do is give developers some sort of incentive to implement those in the development plans. Again, the development plans, we have a lot coming in, and everything in red is the land area where people who own this property have come in and said, Bob, once the moratorium is lifted, and that's going to be, it was extended for 2 months, it's till February 3rd. But once that moratorium is lifted, if the council decides to lift it at that point, it's up to council. But then all of these developments are really going to stop popping in, because a lot of people are waiting sort of in line to get them in to say, we really want to do what it is, just tell us what it is you want. And that's what this plan is all about. So we don't want them to all come in and then have to fight with them to say, oh, we don't know exactly what it is you want. We want to be able to say we've conducted this long implementation plan, we've gotten all the community feedback, and as a result of that community feedback, this is where the community is driving your development. So that's kind of makes it a little easier on staff to say that, because we can make sure that we're in alignment with what the community ultimately wants. And that's what we'll be telling council. Other amenities that we could do is incentives would be structured parking. Structured parking is always very expensive for a developer, but we really don't like the big sea of surface parking. And structured parking is really kind of nice. We can camouflage that structured parking. We have structured parking in Crabapple, and if you drive through Crabapple, I think it'd be hard for you to define exactly where it is, and yet it's everywhere in Crabapple. And you can't even tell anymore, because it's integrated under buildings, it's integrated within areas that you really can't find and see. Trails. Trails are another big one. Now, trails is a nice thing, because the city's been spending a lot on trails. They've been buying green space, and Public Works has been working on trail plans that the community has approved. And the trail plan's kind of nice because it shows you where you'd like a trail, but we've taken it to the next level, which again, Cooper Carey is going to review with you. Not only where we'd like to see the trail, but how that trail will look. What is the actual experience that you see and feel when you're on that trail? Because the strongest feedback we've been getting is open space and trails. People want those as big amenities, so we're going to incentivize those. Linear parks is another big one. We're going to make sure that when you're driving through Deerfield and driving through this area, that it just has that nice Milton look and feel. And you can almost tell already, if you start driving through, what's being built in Forsyth County and what's being done in Alpharetta. That is not where we're going. We are working with all the city roads and as far as the state roads, which is GDOT on Highway 9. And we're really trying to improve that look and feel, and I'll get into that in a sec. No changes to zoning densities or uses. I mean, we might have some incentives that we want to do and say, look, if you build a parking garage, I'm thinking, all right, maybe a half a unit per acre or some sort of thing. I don't really have that defined yet, but some sort of incentive that maybe, to allow the developer to incentivize them to build those. But otherwise, base densities are staying the same right now, and base uses are staying the same. So we're really not looking to change any of that. Okay, I want to remind everybody that we did council did approve the urban growth boundary. So what is an urban growth boundary? We sat there and said, in the city of Milton, we want to make sure that our commercial districts and our economic engine areas don't keep creeping. because that's what happens in communities. They just keep going. And all of a sudden, a developer comes in and asks for a rezoning someplace that's outside of the Deerfield area and says, oh, we just want to keep this growing either west or we just want to keep kind of growing. And the worst part of that is that you can have areas that are underdeveloped or ailing, right? They're kind of starting to blight almost, like the Fry's property, say. And then all of a sudden somebody comes in and says, oh, council, would you approve a rezoning? We want this beautiful residential area and we're going to put our buildings there. So with the whole idea of the urban growth boundary was, no, that's not ever going to happen. So anything within the urban growth boundary now will say you need to redevelop this and you will never be able to expand into the other rural areas of Milton. So that's a protection for everybody who lives in the Milton area to know that these commercial areas will not just keep creeping and expanding. They're going to be concentrated right where we have them now. We're just going to redevelop them into more active areas. But this is the economic engine for the city. And we did a big study and we said, geez, we want to make sure that the ratio of tax income from commercial to residential is somewhat balanced. And right now in Milton, it's very low, right? It's like 11% commercial. That means that most of the tax burden is reflected on residential landowners. And other cities, let's say Alpharetta's at like 42%. So it really is a difference. So I think I only say this because of the importance to maintain this area as our economic engine. We really want to maintain office buildings and corporations coming in because they drive in employment, they pay the higher tax base. So we really don't want to turn Milton totally into a residential-only community. And you can see on this map what's red is our higher commercial areas. And it's from a land area perspective for the whole city, it's not that great. Okay, quick update on GDOT, because everybody comes in and says, what's happening with GDOT? Okay, so the city has made several requests to GDOT, and we've been working with GDOT staff and their leadership on a whole bunch of items. One is we're trying to slightly realign the road in areas where they're coming in and looking to destroy our existing mature landscape. So a lot of these areas, like the area across from Target Shopping Center, there's all mature landscaping in here. And when we work with GDOT, we said a very small shift to the east, very tiny, couple of feet, would really lessen the impact on all that mature landscape. And it's not a big shift, it's a very small area of road realignment. So I think they're open to it, and we've been working with them on that. Pedestrian-friendly things like crosswalks, we're trying to improve on those to make them nicer. The way we do that is we put red brick areas that that it's a crosswalk. If it's a non-GDOT road, there's the option of, especially if it's internal to a development, to put a little speed bump or raise the road, similar to what we did on Heritage in Crabapple. You can still drive through it pretty quick, but it is a reminder to kind of slow you down. And when somebody's on that pedestrian crosswalk, it sort of indicates, hey, look, I'm on this raised area of roadway, and if you're driving by, you really should slow down and give me that. Because one of the big things we've been getting back from the community is we want Deerfield to become more pedestrian connected. We don't want Highway 9 to become this big river and isolate one side of the road to the other. We want to be able to get golf carts through and PTVs and things like that, and people on bicycles and walking. So I think we're really working on that, and that's going good. We're also looking at branding and signage, which is probably not going to be a GDOT supplied item, but the city's looking at that to make sure that we do some branding and signage to make it more pedestrian friendly as well. Other things we're working with GDOT on is landscaping in the medians. Alpharetta and Forsyth don't have anything. They're just going to have medians. They'll probably be concreted or grassed, which never really look good. We want ours to be tree lined. So at this table here with Tracy, she's been working feverishly on putting together a landscaping plan that we've been working on to show where we'd want trees, bushes, grass, at highlighted areas to make Milton look Milton. And ask her what kind of trees she's been picking, because they'll have different looks for the spring and the fall, and things will look really nice. And again, it was community driven. The community said, Bob, we really want to make sure that when we drive through Highway 9, we want something that looks really nice. We want it to look Milton. So we're really working with them, and they've been open to it so far, so especially on that one. Speed reduction, we're looking to lower the speed from 45 to 35, and giving a lot of credit to our council members and our mayor, who've been working very diligently to assist on that, to really try to get that speed limit dropped. We've done studies where the same amount of traffic can flow through the road. It actually flows better when you're at 35, because Deerfield is now a destination. It's where our shopping centers are going to be, right? So we want people to realize it's a destination. It's not a pass-through. People driving really fast, they don't even look and see, geez, what kind of store, maybe let me pull over and shop, because they're just going so fast. It's just too much for them to even slow down. They don't feel safe. So at 35, I think that's a great speed limit, and we're really working on that. And the last one is retaining walls. We're really looking to reduce, possibly eliminate. It's hard to eliminate all, but we're looking to really reduce the amount and the height of retaining walls that GDOT had proposed. I've gotten a lot of email on this. People say, Bob, we have driven through Alpharetta, and it's horrible. And you know what? I have to admit, when I drive through Alpharetta and Forsyth, those walls look horrible. I don't know how else to describe it, but I don't like them. None of them look Milton. And Robert Del Ross has been working with GDOT to clad those walls with real stone. So when we look at them, they'll have beautiful stone walls, boulder-looking walls, rather than that concrete that you're seeing that's all turning red from the red clay. So I think when you drive through Milton, the secret is that you'll know you're in Milton. And that's why people move to Milton and want to be in Milton. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Cooper Carey to discuss the results of the community-driven surveys and the feedback we've gotten. Thanks, Allison.
Oh, thank you, Bob. So the purpose of tonight is to do a couple things. First, we want to make sure we tell you what you told us and what we heard from the community. We had a great open house. We had an introductory meeting in August, an open house in September, and did an online survey after that. And we took all of that feedback, and that's helped us. We have aggregated all of that, taken what you've said, and tried to reflect that back in what we're producing in the design guidelines. Because at the end of the day, it's not Cooper Carey's design guidelines. It is yours. It's Milton's, and it's the Deerfield communities. So with that, I'm just going to kind of quickly run through what we heard. So just to remind everyone, and for those of you who may not have been at previous meetings, a lot of the things we heard really kind of came down to these guiding principles and are sort of what we are looking back to and checking everything against as we do this. So number one, when you are in Deerfield, you know you are in Milton. So you know the different, not just because of the horrible walls on Highway 9 and Forsyth and Alpharetta, but that there's something beautiful about being in Deerfield that is distinctly Milton. It can continue and grow as a place that businesses and local people want to be, want to linger. Provides comfortable and safe places to walk, creates improved connectivity by increased options, defined by a vibrant and high-quality public realm and architecture, and evokes a sense of beauty and shade through landscape. So with that, we asked, what are the 3 new things you'd love to see or do in Deerfield? And we asked this, from the kickoff through the online survey, and most of the comments really were around infrastructure and transportation, better connectivity, better facilities for pedestrians, and able to get somewhere without having to be in a car, but without compromising what it means to get around in a car. Then about 30% of the comments were related to land use and redevelopment. I would say most of the comments around land use expressed support for mixed-use developments, residential above retail, and thoughtfully integrating new housing and commercial spaces. So it was really about being thoughtful and something that had true sensitivity and preserved Milton's unique identity. And then about 25% of the comments were around green spaces and parks. And they focused on creating trails, green spaces to gather, and open space. And then we also asked, what are your favorite things about Deerfield today? And about half of the comments really related to the trees, the landscaping, and the shade. So what that tells us is we really need to, trees and landscape really seem to be a character defining element to what people feel like is Milton, and also something we want to preserve. And then shopping and retail. So the convenience retail, being able to have a Target and a Walmart that's easily accessible is really important. And so how do we maintain that? And then how do we create, and then how do you, create that and create the magic in addition to that? So we had a table at the open house about mobility. And what is mobility? Well, that's just how you get around. It can be by foot, it can be by bike, it can be by golf cart, it can be by car. One of the things that everyone talked about improving connectivity as being highly desirable. And what you see is we had this activity where you could put a string and put where you wanted to start and where you wanted to go. And it didn't have to be necessarily along roads, but it was like trying to understand where people wanted to go to and from. And what I think we saw a lot of is wanting to get to and from the schools and to and from the commercial in a way, again, not having to just get in your car and get on Highway 9 to get to throughout the corridor. But also, there was a lot of comments about infilling where there are gaps in the sidewalks, where you may have sidewalks on part of a street but not on another part of the street. A lot of comments around, can we have something like the Alpha Loop? Something that's a bike trail that maybe is sometimes on the street, maybe it's a dedicated trail through nature and other parts. And then kind of infilling, and Bob talked about this a lot, but you have a lot of large parcels, particularly in the south part of Deerfield. Can you start to increase connectivity through those parcels so that it doesn't feel like you have to get on Morris, Webb, Highway 9, or Deerfield to get around? And of course, Highway 9 was a big comment, but Bob talked about that. So we asked about architectural look and feel. I think go back.
Did I go what?
Yeah, there we go. about architectural look and feel. And so what we show on this slide is really what got the most favorable votes. And what I would say is that what we heard at the open house was very consistent with what we heard in our conversations with the council members, with the planning commission, with the design review board. But I think what you see consistently is high quality materials, opportunities to be indoor and outdoor, particularly with dining options, and places to gather. And we asked about, what does a mixed-use building look like? What would that look like for Deerfield? Because what we know is that you want it to be uniquely Milton. Is there something that's a little bit different about the architectural look and feel of Deerfield versus Crabapple? How do they relate? And so I think what you see here are that you can see this picture here on the left got 70% favorability, and the picture 68 and 57. So all really close. And what you see is there's a lot of high quality materials and a lot of, a lot of people say it doesn't look flat. So, I think that's very consistent. Okay, we had a lot of conversation about open space and parks, and I think, again, we see a lot of consistency of people love spaces where there are trees and places to sit maybe on a bench, but also relax on the grass, places that provide a lot of options for what you do in the space. Same thing, I think, with plazas. Plazas tend to, they're surrounded by buildings, and maybe they have some hardscape, paving or tile or brick, but also some green space. So you see a combination of really interesting lighting and spaces to sit, where you can just do a lot of different things. And then we talked about hubs, and Gray will talk a little bit more about what hubs mean, but those are the bigger gathering places for the community. And can you imagine that there would be a hub where the broader community of Milton could come and gather? And so again, these got very highly favorable input and consistently, and you can see here, this is the town center at Suwanee, where you could have large events, or you would feel comfortable going there when there's no large event, but it's a place to sit and have your lunch. So really, the comments really centered around, again, consistent trees and shade, and the balance of activation with density. And I think, no surprise, people want to have their places activated. Comments here and around activation and density mentioned Avalon, attributes of downtown Alpharetta, not mimicking that, but I think a lot of people from Milton go to downtown Alpharetta and enjoy the ability to sit outside and eat. So we got a lot of comments about that, but not having buildings that are too big. So how can you have that activity, have some invigoration, but it's not 15, 16, 17-story buildings, right? And then we really wanted to talk about amenities and outdoor events. Fire pits, food truck, coffee bars, and amphitheaters got a lot of favorable input. So you kind of see the range from intimate to large gathering spaces. And again, also the opportunity for playful got a lot of positive feedback. So you can hear playing cornhole, but even something a little bit different as having hammocks in the park. A lot of people saw that and really liked it. And again, when we talk about spaces that provide for socialization, places to sit and lighting consistent across the board, but then fountains, and then the funny, playful art style installations in the open space also got a lot of favorable comments. So keywords that came up that people really told us was they wanted to have outdoor spaces that emphasized a natural look and feel and more family friendly. They discussed places to play, have picnics, and enjoy the outdoors. Again, no surprise for people who live in Milton that they really want to have a place to enjoy the outdoors. But they also wanted the opportunity to have programs, events in these outdoor spaces, so live music, farmers markets, community gatherings, flexible to allow for community interaction. And then also related to the outdoor activity was a retail experience. They want restaurants that are integrated into the outdoors, including coffee shops, cozy cafes, and bakeries. There's a clear desire for connection of these elements to parks and open spaces. Again, in this conversation, we had references to Avalon, downtown Suwanee, and downtown Greenville, South Carolina came up. So then we asked a little bit more detail about sort of the landscape palette. And again, Gray will get into this a little bit more, but we had very consistent. This picture on the left shows up many times in the public feedback, getting positive feedback, but you can see here the images that got the top votes. We also had the next palette is what we called modern farmhouse. It also got highly favorable comments. And then we had a one that was more contemporary, and it got no surprise, it got a little bit less favorable comments. Although, again, seeing something really interesting and artistic in the landscape continues to get positive feedback. Keywords in what we heard: natural and rural, preference for natural landscapes, trees, and rural charm, less interest in a contemporary feel, but there was some interest in sprinkling in a little bit of contemporary to make it a little bit different. Not too much, but a little bit. But also functional spaces. The community wanted a significant focus placed on spaces that provide seating, protected paths, open and welcoming to community gatherings. Water, lights, and accessories had a lot of feedback, not just landscaping, but fountains and lights that were welcoming and charming. So what we heard at the open house can be summed up is, what we heard is that you want more opportunities to enjoy food and beverage and entertainment in Deerfield in a more walkable environment that exists today. So we did that same exercise in an online survey, and I just want to, this is great, I wanted to say that the open house, we asked people where they lived because we really wanted to understand and where people were coming from to the open house. And over 80% of the attendees at the open house lived and or worked in Deerfield. And we asked the same question for the online survey because we wanted to understand, is there a huge difference in what people want from the people who live in Deerfield and the people who just live in broader Milton? And what we found is, so for the online survey, just to give you some context, it was 55% live in Deerfield and 45% did not live in Deerfield. So we got that's really good balance between yes and no. And about 66% do not work in Deerfield and 34% do. Okay, so how was it different? Was it any different? Not a lot. So you can see the favorite image from the open house was also the same in the online survey. The next slide. The mixed use image was actually really different, which is interesting. Although you can see it's not a super large building, but it is a little bit different mixed use building than before. And the top comments that we got, again, family friendly and community oriented, places where people can be with their family and be social, rustic small town aesthetic, natural elements, rustic finishes, concealed parking, a lot of comments about can we reduce the amount of surface parking? Because if you look here, there's just a lot of real estate that is committed to parking. Natural and green space, and walkability and local business support. Again, for the amenities and socialization images, this image was also most preferred in the open house. So very consistent. Again, almost exactly the same images. We did get a little more water in the online survey, but not a lot. Culture, it's the same three images. The top three images in the online survey were also the top three images in the open house, but the amphitheater got more positive votes, and then the fire pit image. Top comments for amenities. Really quaint Milton-inspired spaces that were small and intimate. Family-friendly is consistent. Multi-use paths with gathering spots, scenic, walking, spaces for food trucks and events and socialization. And the landscape look and feel, again, it's very consistent. That rural image gets a lot more votes. What I would say in the modern farmhouse is very similar, but if you go to the contemporary, in the online survey, we actually got a lot more positive comments around the contemporary landscape elements. So just of interest. But I think what you see is playfulness and art in the landscape and in the urban design seems to be consistent. Rural and natural aesthetics, the top comments here around, rural and natural aesthetic, authenticity, and pedestrian-friendly spaces. And here we asked, what does the community love? And this was to the online crowd. It was natural beauty and green spaces, rural-urban balance and community charm, convenience and accessibility. So again, really consistent. Same thing. So if you go to the next. So how did we interpret that? And I know you've all had a chance to look around, but I can explain a little more. So what we did then was start to say, well, what does that look like? So what does it look like to have something that reduces the surface parking, gets some activity in the right locations? So I think it's really important to look at these and understand, how do we begin to think about, particularly in southern Deerfield, how there can be more active places for people to gather and enjoy community and also retail accessibility and walkability. Again, what we also heard was, this could be somewhere along Webb Road, was how can it have more landscape, and how can it have better sidewalks and more facilities for bikes, walking, and other modes of transportation? What does it look like to gather at night where it's light, where you feel comfortable walking around? Again, you can see here, this is what it would look like to have a multi-use trail going through a retail, for a redeveloped area. What does it look like to have a restaurant in an area with there's a multi-use trail, there's a street, there's on-street parking, and there's small sidewalk space. And again, that was multi-level retail. So what does it look like to have sort of a rooftop dining experience as well? So,
Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. So here's the study area, and I think this is somewhat similar to this map. As we started to think about this, we started to think about, well, where are the opportunities where there could be redevelopment? So taking this and thinking about where the redevelopment or opportunity sites could be. Sorry, it's slow. And then we wanted to also understand the transect zones. So there are opportunities, but then you have a really good form-based code for Deerfield. And the purpose is not to radically change that. It is really to just help create a vision for what it could be as redevelopment is implemented.
What does transect mean?
So that's really, what that really means is
Do you want to go back?
how you apply density. So in a transect zone of T2, it's more a little bit of commercial and single family residential. And then as you move to the south, the transect zones, you get to a T6, and that allows a little bit bigger buildings, a little bit more different types of uses. The streets may be a little bit wider to accommodate more traffic. So you think of a transect zone these go from lower density to higher density. So as we started to think about it, what you see in that rendering, what we understand is that doesn't need to, or nor should it happen in every part of Deerfield. So we started to think about, where is the right place for really active spaces and really active places, and where is it quieter, even though there may be some redevelopment opportunities. So generally, we started to break that down into sub-districts, where in North Deerfield, it's really close to single-family residential. So we wanted to think about, how do you layer in, there may be some redevelopment opportunity, there may be some parcels that could redevelop, but how do you layer in walkability and activity, but it still works where you're in a quieter part of Deerfield, even though you're on Highway 9, but you're near more single family. And then you have in central Deerfield, you have a great, that's where your Publix is, that's where the high school is. So that's a really important node of neighborhood serving retail. And so that starts to feel different. But then as you go south on Highway 9, the opportunity for redevelop, you have larger redevelopment opportunities, and so that's where you start to get more active locations where maybe you have a more broader mix of uses, and the sites are larger, and so you're going to have larger redevelopment opportunities. And then, of course, Deerfield Parkway, this sub-district, this is really where the current office park properties are, and you want to think about those in a particular way. And so the character, it all works together as one Deerfield, but it's not all one size fits all. Sorry, it's slow. There we go. So what we started to think about is, and we have this board up so you can come study, is, what does it mean in the north? So there's a little bit of a node of commercial and potential redevelopment across from the Crooked Creek neighborhood, but that feels, there's already a little bit of retail there, and maybe there's a little bit of single family that could infill there, but it's very neighborhood centric. But also, we want to really start here and start building in better connective trail infrastructure, right? So the connecting piece is really the landscape and the trails and the pedestrian connections, but this feels quieter. And then you transition into the neighborhood serving retail, and we want to really be able to preserve the strength of having the Publix, but also fill in walkability. So the redesign of the Bethany Bend Road with Highway 9 will allow, I think, you to create over time a great linear green space through there, because they're going to redesign that intersection, although it's not fully designed yet. But so layering into what's already strong there, and more trail infrastructure, but also really strengthening that as a commercial core. And then you get to, you start to transition really at this building, right? You start to feel a little bit of a character change. And that doesn't mean it gets a lot denser, but what it does mean is you feel a transition into the busier commercial core to the south. And so this zone here really feels like a transition zone in character. Maybe the lot sizes get a little bit smaller, but again, you're continuing to implement pedestrian infrastructure. And then you really hit the current Kohl's shopping center. This is really at the intersection of Highway 9 and Webb Road and Morris Road and Webb Road and Deerfield Parkway. That's really where there's the opportunity to infuse activity. Again, not increasing density, but infilling that level of community activity that is very clear that the community wants to have. That opportunity to linger with your family, have dinner, eat outside, enjoy parks, plazas, and open space, and maybe be able to do that not by having to get into your car, but by walking on a really cool loop trail or on really great sidewalks with trees and landscaping that make everything comfortable to move around. So I think we really think about this concept as, where do you infuse activity and where do you shore up quiet and connectivity and really the existing strengths of Deerfield? Because there's a lot of great things about this neighborhood that we want to maintain and improve with just better sidewalks and trails. Next. I know. Sorry, it's slow. These are big graphics. There we go. Okay. So an important aspect of that is what we call the multimodal network. So that comes by way of not just adding trails, well, that's really important, but it's also, as properties redevelop, it is layering in additional road connections and road connections that accommodate all modes of transportation. And also, over time, and we're working very closely with the city to think about as other modes of transportation may be incorporated in the future, making sure that the infrastructure that gets built both on private land and public land accommodates that safely and appropriately. But what you see here is a system where we're starting to layer in, where do new roads want to go in Deerfield? And in particular, and I think this is helpful, these large parcels really just have entrances and exits. What we want to be able to do, I think my battery died. Can you hear me? Okay. What we want to be able to do is, as these properties redevelop, in our design guidelines, say to the property owner, okay, in your site plan, you have to build a road connection through the property and create a system of blocks and streets that create a grid of transportation that is accessible, and they're not private. They may be privately maintained, but they're a part of the street grid of Deerfield. They start to layer in a secondary transportation network that makes it comfortable to get around. So you're not always having to get on Deerfield Parkway or Highway 9 or Webb Road to get between these properties. So that's a really kind of the main element that I think begins to transform particularly the southern portion of Deerfield into something that's a little bit more granular and not just these large parcels that you drive by and you have no orientation to what's going on inside. And so with that, I'm going to transition to talk a little bit more about the trail diagram to Gray.
Oh.
So he can talk a little bit about what
Sure.
we talked about with trails.
Okay. Good evening. Thanks for sticking with us.
I know it
that
doesn't
work. Yeah. So, as Bob mentioned in the beginning, and we've kind of hit on a few times, open space is going to be kind of the connective tissue that holds all these different ideas together. And it's one of the things that we have sort of the most control over, what the final look and feel of that is. And since walkability was a big comment that we heard over and over and over again, the idea of creating a trail system, a formalized trail system for Deerfield, started to make a lot of sense as a way to kind of break down the scale of this area, but also create this kind of necklace here that you kind of hang all these different jewels off of, like the Alpha Loop, like the Beltline, like you see happening in other communities. These new opportunities to circulate through, your city, create new, kind of perspectives on what could happen here and there, right? So there have been three major studies so far that have already looked at sort of mobility in this area. There's been a Milton Trails implementation plan. There's been a Windward Parkway sort of trail plan. There have been a few things. So what we're trying to do is take the lessons learned from those studies and build upon that and layer a little bit more fine-grained detail on what the trail plan might look like. But the big picture would be a loop that encircles Deerfield with a central spine, the central spine being Highway 9. Then there'd be a hierarchy within the trail system of different, kind of intensities of trail. Primary loop would be, basically what I just was circling here, the main kind of circulation route with the spine down the middle, the circular route with the spine down the middle. Then you'd have these secondary trails, auxiliary trails. Some of the trails that, and you can see maybe closer on the board when you get a chance, have already been identified in previous studies, so we went ahead and labeled them as such, so that just to make the point that we're not reinventing the wheel. And then there's some areas where you would just be filling in existing sidewalks, connecting the dots between what's there and what's not. The trail system also creates an opportunity to brand this Deerfield, Destination Deerfield. It helps give an identity to the place. And so, there are the circles here, which identify potential trailheads or kind of gateway elements. That's where we could really see environmental graphics and architectural implementations, which would create a look and feel that are easily identifiable as you are moving through. Some of these are going to be in public space, so they would be city funded. Some of these would be on private land. So as we've been talking about, as some of these development parcels, especially in the south, come online, the city would be able to kind of hold the developers to, okay, well, we have a trail connection identified through this parcel. It's going to be this type of trail. The routing is sort of up to the developer to figure out, but that kind of thing is an opportunity for the city to work with the private sector to kind of fill in the web here. We started taking a look at what some of the different characters of these trails could be. Some of them are softer surface trails. It could be decomposed granite. It could be rubber mulch. It could be loose mulch. Some of them on the next slide are going to be a little bit more structured. So like on a Highway 9, for example, or not necessarily Highway 9, but on a larger street, where you have the landscape strip, you have the multi-use trail, which can accommodate not only walkers, bikers, and on the wider pieces, golf carts as well, incorporating landscape and all of that. And then when you get into the kind of the private areas, like this one, for example, I think we're thinking about the Verizon site, has a really nice reservoir on the site, right? Wouldn't it be great if the general public could access that, and walk past it and, enjoy it? Wasn't behind a sea of parking in a 9 to 5 kind of crowd. No offense to the 9 to 5 crowd, they're fine, but they don't. These are things that we should all be able to enjoy. So these would be the types of things that we could say to a developer. Okay, we want this look and character. We would have a kit of parts, that we would give to them that says, these are the different types of trails. These are, fencing, lighting, furniture, all that kind of stuff that goes with it, and let them kind of, work with them about that. The trails then also become kind of part and parcel to some of these redevelopment amenity zones. So, the trails become an extension of the outdoor dining. They become an extension of some of these activatable spaces within these developments. There might be a plaza where there's a water feature, or there could be a stage where you have, Friday night bands are playing, or, you might have a farmer's market on Sunday mornings or whatever it is. The trails are that link that gets you, right in through those things. And if we're designing them correctly, where they're integrated seamlessly into these developments, they become an extension of those outdoor spaces. So that's kind of the look and feel we're going for here. And then there's an open space network that complements all of the stuff that we're talking about. And the way we looked at it is that you have sort of 3 main hierarchies of open space: hubs, parks, and plazas. The hubs are the big nodes of activity that we've been kind of hinting around this whole time. We talked a lot at the last open house about kind of what that is, and what is the key to a successful hub in this case. And what it is that people have sort of communicated to us that they want authenticity. They want something that doesn't look like it was manifested in a single day. All the buildings look the same. It can't look manufactured or artificial. It wants to look and feel authentic. It wants to feel Milton, right? The scale needs to be right. The architecture needs to be right. The landscape needs to be right. The materiality needs to be right. So, we have identified, and you can also see it maybe better there. There are some definite hub opportunities which correspond mostly in the south area of the plan, with kind of the Verizon site, the Kohl's site, the bigger kind of retail hubs. So in the design guidelines that we'll be writing, there will be sort of narratives about these types of spaces, and there'll be, again, a palette. Sort of these are the things that we want to see in there. These are the amenities, these are the materials, these are kind of the sizes that we're looking for of sidewalks and parking and all this kind of stuff. So those are the hubs, and the hubs may include parks and plazas, which are the other two categories. There could be standalone parks and plazas. There really are not a lot of existing parks in this study area. I mean, there's North Park, but that's Alpharetta, even though it is basically in our zone. So I wanted to show it for reference. There are a lot of schools which have athletic facilities, which are not exactly open to the public, but they are there. You've got Freedom Park, which is a small public park. There is a piece of land on Webb Road that has been identified as a preserve. I don't think anything's really happening with it yet, but that's there. And then you've got this this park that's going to be coming online on Deerfield Parkway, which is there's a conceptual design for that park, but it's actually will be coming to the public relatively soon for you to review and comment on. And its position and kind of the bullseye of our main activity zone is going to put a lot of heat on that park. So we will do our best to influence kind of how that shapes out so that we make sure that it's complementing the other uses around it. Then there are other areas of opportunity. Some of the larger sites have some really beautiful trees and like I mentioned with Verizon, the pond, things like that we'd love to capitalize on. And then the trail system itself, to me, becomes a very important linear park system. Now, again, on some cases, that trail system is going to be right on the side of the road, and it's going to essentially look and feel like a sidewalk. But there are other areas where veer off the road. It can go into a natural area, have a different look and feel. So we kind of see mobility and open space and this trail system as all one kind of idea, right? They all have to complement each other, and then that is what kind of helps activate some of these spaces to become a little bit more kind of I don't know. They become a little more attractive to development if they have that access.
So with that, we wanted to give an opportunity for you to stand up and look. I know you have it. You have a packet in your hand, but we're going to be around to answer questions, talk through this. We do have some sticky notes if you do have some comments. We do want to record those. And I know you got a paper to vote on your implementation priorities. Because the other thing, as Bob said, we're going to be getting into the implementation. We are knee deep, probably neck deep in the design guidelines right now, as you can imagine. But as we move into implementation, we want to understand what your priorities are so that we can also shape how we think about implementation to prioritize. Again, this is not our plan, this is your plan. And so how we prioritize how things get implemented and how we can start to shape things to hopefully reflect your priorities. So with that, there's opportunities. Tracy will be and Rob will be at that table you can look at the Highway 9 sort of median design, and then Gray and I and Bob will be around. Also at the back, we didn't have this category in the previous conversations, but in thinking about what does it mean to have commercial development, this is your commercial tax base. So we wanted to get some thought, if you have any, on the input on what a flex commercial building might look like, which is not an office building, it's not a retail building, it's something sort of in between, and get your input on the look and feel of that. Yeah.
Question. What's the time frame for all of this, and what would be the first thing that you would begin with?
So there's not a solid answer to that. So there's sort of two phases to that. Number one, we want to hear from you in terms of what you would like to see how you would like to see things implemented. So some of it depends a little bit on what you give us feedback on. But the second part of that is what we also know is that there's the public side and what the city of Milton will implement. And then there's the private side, which is when redevelopment opportunities happen, which quite frankly is when a lot of what you see in the changes in the architecture and new, uses happen when those sites redevelop. And that's really, but as Bob said, there are people eager to redevelop and are waiting for all of this, the design guidelines specifically to be done to begin the process of getting approvals to do redevelopment plans.